Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mandy and this week we're going to be sharing 4 easy, delicious meals for your family. This week is the last week of the month, so I wanted to do a low spend week. So I'm just cooking from what I have on hand in my freezer, in my pantry, and I'm taking your advice. I asked in the community tab what I can make and what were some suggestions. Tonight's meal, I have pulled out some pulled pork. A couple videos ago, I did a pork butt and I did some carnitas style pork, and then we made it into a Cuban sandwich. Anyway, I had about this much left in my freezer, so I thawed that out. And thanks to Paula Rose, who suggested that we turn this pulled pork into pulled pork nachos. So I'm gonna start by getting my pulled pork heated up, and then we're gonna start making a queso. So the first thing I need to do is heat up this pulled pork. And I don't want it to dry out. So I'm going to put the pulled pork in this saucepan, and then I'm going to add in like a cup of water, and I'll probably add in some barbecue sauce as well. And then I'm gonna let this simmer on my stove. Again, I just wanna heat this through, but I don't want it to dry out. So I definitely want to add a lot of moisture to the pot. And then I'm just gonna let this kind of simmer on the stove while I start working on my queso. Next, I have preheated my oven to 375, and I was digging through my fridge and found these 2 bits of pepperoncinis in my fridge that I need to use up. So I am going to slice up these pepperoncinis, and that's going to use up 2 containers from my fridge. Now, as I get ready to use my queso, I'm thinking about using these onions. I have a little bit of sharp cheddar cheese. I have this pepper jack cheese, and I have a can of green chilies. So I think that's what I'm going to use to make the queso. Now, to make the queso, I'm going to warm this sauce pot up here on my stove, and I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to let that butter melt down, and then I'm going to be adding in some flour. I'm basically just making a roux. So once I add in some flour, I'm going to just constantly stir this to cook the flour and get it incorporated with the butter. And so you just want to keep stirring this until the raw flour has been cooked into the butter. And then I'm going to be adding in some milk. This is going to be the basis for my cheese sauce. Next, I'm going to be adding in the milk. And once you add in the milk, you want to consistently stir just to incorporate the flour into the milk and to not have lumps. So I'm just going to continue stirring this as the temperature of the milk raises, and you can see here I have now pulled that off of the direct heat. The milk has incorporated into the roux, and you do not want to add your cheese with the mixture boiling. So I've removed it from the heat. I'm adding in my cheeses. I've added in the rest of my sharp cheddar. I'm adding in a handful of the pepper jack, and I'm just going to be giving this a stir until the cheese melts. And I'm also going to be adding in those green chilies, and so this is going to be continuing to thicken as I am stirring this cheese in. And you can see here the deliciousness and the gooiness that this cheese sauce, this queso, has. So as I'm building my nachos on my sheet pan, I have sprayed the sheet pan. I'm putting a layer of tortilla chips on the bottom of the sheet pan. The one thing I will say about nachos is you want the flavors on all of the chips. So I would use a pretty large sheet pan. I'm now going to put some of the pulled pork. I'm going to sprinkle that over my tortilla chips. I'm trying to make sure and get an even coverage here. And then I'm going to be adding on some of that delicious queso. So I'm going to pour some of the queso over the chips here. I'm going to try not to make it too gloppy. I'm going to try to spread it out to where the chips all get a little bit of queso. I'm going to put a few of those pepperoncinis on top, and then I'm just going to repeat the layers. I'm not going to do as big of a layer on top, but I am going to add more chips. I'm going to add more barbecue, more pepperoncinis, and obviously some more queso. I'm then going to take the finished sheet pan here of the nachos, and I'm going to put that in a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes. And here are the nachos out of the oven. It smells amazing. It looks amazing. I'm going to take just a little bit of barbecue sauce and drizzle over the top. You can do this if you want. You don't have to. I have seen where some have put pico de gallo on top. But I'm just going to use the barbecue sauce, and then I'm going to take some leftover sour cream that I have in my fridge, and I'm just going to try to drizzle that over the top as well. You could put whatever toppings that you want on this. I'm trying to keep this a low spend week and just use what I have. So here is my nachos, and they were delicious. All right, I've got my nachos. Let's do a taste test. All right, here we go. Wow, that is so delicious. I'm trying with the pepper. That is so good. Pulled pork nachos. So good. Thank you so much for the suggestion, Paula Rose. Great way to use up leftover pulled pork. Wow. Y'all need to try this. Hey y'all, tonight's meal we're going to be making a homemade hamburger helper, and thank you to Mary Raybon and April Little for suggesting that on my community tab. So let's get to making this. So I have this pound of ground beef from my butcher box that I got a couple months ago. I need to use this up, so I'm going to be browning this up, and I'm also going to be using some elbow macaroni to make this meal. After I start my meat browning on the stove, I'm going to get some spice mixes ready. I'm going to take some cornstarch. That's going to be a thickening agent. I'm going to add that to this plate. Next, I'm going to be adding in some paprika to the plate. Then I'm going to add some garlic powder. The next spice called for onion powder. I didn't have any onion powder, so I just used some minced onion. I added some sugar, and then of course I added some salt and pepper. Once my meat was all cooked up, I added all of my spices to the meat, and this would be what you would consider the packet of seasoning that comes in a hamburger helper box, but of course this, I can control what's in the seasonings. I added some Worcestershire sauce, I gave this a stir, and this was the beginning to my hamburger helper. The next step is to add in my liquid. So I have 2 cups of hot water, and then I'm going to be adding in some milk. I have 2 cups of milk. When you cook hamburger helper, usually you're going to cook about 2 cups of pasta. So I have poured out 2 cups of this elbow macaroni, and I'm going to add the rest to this container. I already have a tiny bit of ditalini in there. Anytime that I have little bits of pasta left over, I pour it into this container, and even though it's all mixed up, it's great to add to soups. So I add in my elbow macaroni to my boiling hamburger mixture. I cover and I let it simmer for about 12 minutes. And then this is the finished pasta, and I'm going to add in some of this pizza blend cheese that I had on hand to make this extra cheesy and extra creamy. And after 20 minutes, this is what the hamburger helper looks like, and it smells so good. So I start digging through my fridge, and I find I have these little bits of jalapeno dill pickle spears, and I think, wouldn't that be delicious on this hamburger helper? So I decide to dice it up. So here is my bowl of hamburger helper. I take some of those jalapeno dill pickles. I put that on top, and then my bowl is finished. And look at this bowl, y'all. This is going to be amazing. I can already tell. Right, it's time for the taste test. It's kind of hot. Let's get a bite with the jalapeno pickles. Wow. That is so good and so much better than the boxed hamburger helper. Thank you, Mary Raybon, and thank you, April Little. Y'all gotta try this. It's delicious. Add the pickle. Hey guys, tonight's meal we are going to be finishing up our pantry cooking challenge where I've had a low spend week and I'm trying to use up some bits and things that I have. I'm taking one of your suggestions and I'm going to be doing baked spaghetti. So thank you, Mary F409. We are going to put together a baked spaghetti with some odds and ends that I have left in my pantry, in my fridge and freezer, and then we're going to see how it turns out. Okay, so for this baked spaghetti, I'm gonna go off a recipe that my mom uses that is so delicious. So I'm going to be loosely basing mine on that. I have about a little more than half of this linguine left. And so I wanted to use that up. And so I know it's not spaghetti, but it'll be okay. That's what we're gonna use. And I have a little bit of Italian sausage that I had cooked up. I think this is half a pound of Italian sausage that I had cooked up in a previous recipe. That was hanging out in my freezer. I'm gonna add that to another pound of sweet Italian pork sausage that I got from my butcher box a couple months ago to use that up. And then I'm gonna be using some pasta sauce. And then I'm gonna be adding some of that mozzarella cheese you saw on the other recipe and a can of cream of mushroom soup. So the recipe starts out, it's just basic spaghetti. I'm just gonna be browning up my sausage, I'm gonna be boiling up my pasta, and then we're just gonna mix it together. So I have the rest of this sliced mozzarella cheese that I never used, so I'm just going to use it up on the top of this baked spaghetti. And then I have a little bit of other mozzarella cheese that I'm going to use. I'm going to put this into a 425-degree oven for 30 minutes. If you hear any noises in the background, my husband's doing yard work, so there's that. But I did want to come on here and let you know that this is a great way to use up any leftover spaghetti. In fact, that's what my mom does. If she makes spaghetti for dinner one night and has some left, she goes ahead, mixes the noodles and the sauce. She puts it in her freezer, and then she says anytime she's gonna have maybe guests come over and she needs something quick, she will put this casserole together. She'll get out the spaghetti from her freezer, she thaws it out, puts it in her casserole dish, puts the mushroom soup on top, some mozzarella cheese, pops it in the oven. A great way to prepare for unexpected guests, or a great way to prep for a bigger meal, and a great way to use up leftover spaghetti. So here is my finished baked spaghetti out of the oven. It smells amazing, it is bubbly, and it is gorgeous. I let it sit for a few minutes, and this is our plate. This was delicious. All right, so I have my plate here. I'm gonna taste the baked spaghetti. I let it sit for about 15 minutes just so it could cool down and set up a little bit. Really creamy. I like the cream of mushroom soup. It tastes different than my mom's recipe because she always makes it with ground beef and I made it with that sweet Italian sausage. It gives it a different kind of flavor. It's not bad, it's good, it's just different. I think I would prefer the ground beef, but hey, I need to use up that sausage. Thank you for the idea, Mary over at Mary F409. This is good. You should try it. So in the intro to this video, I think I said that I was gonna be doing 4 pantry meals. And I'm just gonna be real with y'all. This week got side railed. It went off the tracks. It's been so busy this week that I actually only got around to 3 of the meals. So that's gonna do it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that I inspired you to feed your family something delicious and affordable. And I'll see you next time. Bye.